No, thank you. Take all of it. Thank you. Right, we now come to questions to the Solicitor General. Sarah Coombes.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 1 and 5 together. This government is committed to halving violence against women and girls in the next decade. We're not only fixing the foundations of our economy, but rebuilding trust in our criminal justice system with an additional £49 million in the budget for the Crown Prosecution Service. What this will mean is additional specialists in rape and serious sexual offences, boosting investigators to tackle these awful offences.
Sarah Coombes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, over 3,000 women in Sandwell were victims of domestic abuse. Getting cases through the justice system quicker is vital to breaking the cycle of abuse and protecting victims. So can the Minister set out further what the government's doing to make sure the police and prosecutors work together to tackle domestic abuse?
I thank my honourable friend for raising this very important point and thank her too for the work that she is doing in this area. For too long, victims of domestic abuse across the country have been let down. But this week, we've welcomed a new domestic abuse joint justice plan between police and prosecutors, which will see them working more closely together to support victims to deliver swifter investigation and justice for all.
Will Still.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prosecutions and convictions for domestic abuse have plummeted over the last 8 years under the previous government. Additionally, the time taken to charge domestic abuse cases has increased dramatically. Given the alarming rise in delays, what measures is the Solicitor General implementing to expedite these processes and ensure timely justice for the victims?
My honourable friend raises a powerful point. It's right to say that between 2016-17 and 23-24, domestic abuse flag cases received by the CPS from the police dropped by nearly 36%. We're now beginning to see a rebound in those figures, but there is much more that needs to be done. We need a whole system approach to fix the system, and our domestic abuse joint justice plan will ensure the CPS and police work more closely together to address those delays from the very outset of a case.
James Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been contacted by a constituent who had concerns about how they were treated in a rape case and the communication that came from the police and the CPS. What steps is the Solicitor General taking to ensure that victims are properly informed all the way through?
I thank the honourable member for his question, and I am sorry to hear about that specific case. I'm happy, of course, to make contact directly with any local Crown Chief Prosecutors to address the specific case, but more generally, victim transformation work is taking place across both police and CPS. For example, investment in victim liaison officers to make sure there is a single point of contact, that victims are supported right the way through the criminal justice process.
Can I welcome the Shadow Solicitor General, Helen Grant, to the front?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker, and it is indeed an honour to stand at the dispatch box again, albeit on the other side of this great chamber. And I do hope to work constructively with the Honourable Lady on this challenging and very intricate part of government. Violence against women and children is abhorrent and inexcusable. It crushes self-confidence and self-esteem in victims. It wrecks families and it ruins lives. As a former family lawyer of 23 years prior to this place, I do welcome the government's mission to halve violence against women and girls within the next decade. To achieve this important goal, what action is the government taking in terms of prevention, early intervention, and when will the specialist rape courts be introduced?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start by welcoming the Shadow Solicitor General to her place. She brings enormous experience, not only in legal matters, but specifically in relation to violence against women and girls, and I look forward to working constructively with her in this area. Let me also take the opportunity to welcome the appointment of the new Shadow Attorney General and send my best wishes to the Right Honourable and learned member for Kenilworth and Southam as he departs his role. In answer to her question, she's right that the commitment to halve violence against women and girls in the next decade is a cross-government initiative. And prevention and early intervention are a core part of that. That's why when the VORG Mission Board met earlier, there was a real focus on education, how we educate around consent and on early intervention so that we can prevent these cases entering the criminal justice process.
Helen Grant.
Thank you. The government have announced an extra 49 million in funding to support victims of crime, and that this funding will enable additional staff recruitment at the specialist rape and serious sexual offence units of the Crown Prosecution Service. Can the Solicitor General confirm to the House the number of additional staff to be taken on, and when will they be in place?
She's right to welcome the additional £49 million, which will be invested in those specialist units in every CPS area in rape and serious sexual violence. But it's important that the CPS has discretion over how that money is spent, so it makes sure that resource is directed and targeted in those areas where it's most needed, so that we can deliver for the victims of these most serious crimes.
Helen Glover.
Number 2, Mr. Speaker.
This government is deeply committed to addressing the important issue of rural crime. That is why we are strengthening neighbourhood policing in rural areas and implementing stronger laws to prevent farm theft and fly tipping. In addition, we are recommitted that in each CPS area there is a specialist Crown prosecutor who supports the police in charging and prosecuting rural crime.
Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Solicitor General for her answer. The Equipment Theft Prevention Act had support from across the House in the last Parliament. This statutory instrument to bring in these measures is with the Home Office but is yet to be brought forward. Property seized by Thames Valley Police Rural Crime Task Force across South Oxfordshire and Vale of White Horse since the start of 2023 is valued at more than £400,000, with an incalculable impact on farmers' mental health and well-being and anxiety. To improve the rate of prosecutions for rural crime, will the Solicitor General urge her colleagues at the Home Office to bring that statutory instrument before the House?
I thank the honourable member for raising a very important point. I can confirm that we are committed to implementing the Equipment Theft Prevention Act and with that bringing about real benefits and impacts for those farmers who are suffering from the theft and resale of high-value equipment and all the stress and distress that that causes.
Adam Jerby.
Mr. Speaker, and I am very pleased to see the Solicitor General, a very good friend of mine, in her place. A key part of rural crime, particularly in Newcastle and Lyme, is waste, and waste crime has blighted the lives of my constituents for far too long. So can I urge the Solicitor General to do all she can, working with colleagues across government, to hold the rogue operators of landfill sites to account and to make sure they face the full force of the law?
I thank the honourable member for his question. In a previous life, I was an environmental lawyer, and I know just what a scourge those waste offences can be. And that is precisely why the work of specialist Crown prosecutors who work closely with police in charging and prosecuting those types of rural crime is going to be so important.
Question 3, Mr. Speaker.
This government is doing everything possible to recover the millions in public funds lost to COVID-19 related fraud. The Crown Prosecution Service is working closely with investigators to pursue all of those who dishonestly line their pockets with government money.
Jack Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the previous Health Secretary said in relation to COVID-19 contracts that where a contract is not delivered against, we do not intend to pay taxpayers' money. Now, judging from the figures which highlight the enormous scale of COVID-19 related fraud, that was little more than a promise made and a promise broken by the previous government. Now, I'm pleased that our government has made it a priority to recoup as much of this money as possible from scammers who profited at the taxpayers' expense. But 4.5 years on from the first lockdown, my constituents in Ipswich, many of whom sacrificed so much during the pandemic, will be wondering why it has taken this long and a change of government to take this issue as seriously as it deserves to be taken. So can the Solicitor General tell the House if it's A, down to the previous government's incompetence, B, their lack of effort, or C, if it's symptomatic of their more general recklessness?
No, I'm sorry. One of us is going to sit down, it's not going to be me. Can I just say that is a very, very long question. If we could shorten the question, what I would say is I think it is something you might want to apply for an adjournment debate on. Obviously, it's very important. Solicitor General.
My honourable friend raises an important point. In contrast to the previous government, this government is taking action on COVID-related fraud. We've heard from the Chancellor that she will be appointing a COVID corruption commissioner, and that commissioner will be reviewing and assessing all of the PPE contracts that were entered into before any are written off. I think I speak on behalf of all of our constituents that where money was fraudulently obtained, we want our money back.
Joe Poll.
Question number 4, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I will answer questions 4 and 6 together. This government is committed to cracking down on fraud. That's why we've confirmed an additional £9.3 million in funding to further improve the performance of the Serious Fraud Office, enhancing its case management and ensuring better systems for asset recovery.
Joe Poll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I welcome this additional money for the Serious Fraud Office? My right honourable friend will know that Transparency International have assessed the UK as having reduced enforcement of foreign bribery for the first time, and the last bribery investigation to be publicly confirmed was in 2020. So can I ask my right honourable friend what steps have been taken to ensure the SFO actively fulfils its role as the primary enforcement body for foreign bribery?
I'd like to acknowledge my honourable friend's proud track record in highlighting economic crime and his work in exposing dirty money. Indeed, I met with the Director of the Serious Fraud Office just yesterday in this House. We are working closely together to crack down on corruption, fraud and bribery, and I can assure him that the SFO is working incredibly hard in this area.
Tricia Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the year 23-24, there were over 16,000 crimes involving fraud committed in Scotland. As crime of this kind is often committed online and observes no borders, can the Solicitor advise the Chamber whether the UK and Scottish fraud offices are cooperating on the issue?
My honourable friend is correct, and so often these terrible crimes do not respect borders. Fraud that is specific to Scotland is investigated by Police Scotland and prosecuted by the Crown Office and Prosecutor Fiscal Service, who work closely with English-based agencies and the SFO where it is appropriate to do so. This is a government that is committed to strengthening the Union, and of course that extends to law enforcement in this area.
Sir Jeremy Wright.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I warmly welcome my honourable friend, the Shadow Solicitor General, to her post. It's good to see her back, and thank the Solicitor General for her kind words. Can I equally warmly welcome the advent of a failure to prevent offence in relation to certain kinds of economic crime? I know the Solicitor General will agree that the purpose of this exercise is not to engender further prosecutions, but to change behaviour. In that line, could I ask her to reassure the House that she will work with her colleagues across government to make sure that businesses can receive all the advice they need about how to put in place the reasonable anti-fraud measures that will give them a defence under that new offence?
I thank the honourable member for his question, and it's right that just this week we saw guidance published by the Home Office in conjunction with other organisational partners and the SFO in relation to preventing fraud, and of course that will entail working with business to make sure that it is operating as effectively as it can by those who are impacted by this fraud, both individuals and businesses alike.
James Shannon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Minister, thank you for that answer. Not so long ago, there was a programme on TV, Panorama, I think it was, where it showed that dirty money and bribery was moving from Latvia to Germany to Northern Ireland. It showed very clearly that international criminal gangs and paramilitary groups are working together. Has the Minister had an opportunity to discuss how better to tackle these gangs, for instance, working better regionally, but also working together with the Republic of Ireland to ensure that we can combat these groups? Thank you.
Well, of course, I can't comment on any specific cases, but what I do know from my discussions with the Director of the SFO is that they are alive to those cross-jurisdictional issues, and that is part of the purpose of the additional investment that this government has provided to the SFO in order to ensure that its processes, its investigations and case management are as effective and as nimble as they can be, including tackling those cross-jurisdictional issues.
To Liberal Democrat spokesperson Ben Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Solicitor General to her place, and I very much look forward to working with you, and I echo the comments of others welcoming the Shadow Minister to her place. The Solicitors Regulation Authority recently labelled the Legal Services Board's damning report into the handling of the Axiom Ints fraud as merely an opinion. Can the Solicitor General clarify what mechanisms are in place to ensure the regulator is properly regulated, and what actions are being taken by her department to prevent similar economic crimes, to ensure all constituents, including mine in North Cornwall and one in the gallery today, can have confidence in our legal system?
The honourable member, I welcome him to his place, and also the fact that he raises an incredibly important point. This government in general is committed to raising standards and rebuilding trust in the justice system, and that means regulators working effectively with investigators in the public interest. He will know that in accordance with long-established practice, it wouldn't be proper of me to comment on the specific case that he mentions, but I can assure him that we will be working to ensure that regulators are working effectively with investigators in the public interest.
Adam Vokes.
Question number 7, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Victims' Right to Review scheme is a vital mechanism for ensuring that victims have the right to request a review of certain prosecutor decisions, either not to start a prosecution or to stop a prosecution. We are continuing to work with our partners, including the CPS, so that the Victims' Right to Review scheme operates as effectively as possible to deliver for victims the justice they rightly deserve.
Adam Vokes.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Solicitor General. In my short time in this place, I've been shocked and concerned by the rates of violence against women in my constituency of Monmouthshire, and many constituents have reached out to me for support. I'm pleased the government are aiming to halve violence against women in the next decade. But Solicitor General, can you tell us what proportion of violence against women cases request reviews, and how are victims supported through the process, because it is incredibly difficult to maximise their ability to exercise their right to review?
The Victims' Right to Review is something that we are looking at closely. It is informing the subject of discussions which I hope to have later today with the Director of Public Prosecutions. We're also working closely with the Victims Commissioner, who is raising issues around how we might reform this process. But I can assure her that the CPS is looking at this closely. One of the things it's doing is introducing, for the most serious rape and serious sexual offences, where no evidence is offered, that decision is reviewed by a Deputy Crown Prosecutor before it is taken, and that oversight is already producing results.
And Aldridge.
Question number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I will answer questions 8 and 9 together. Council leaders and regional mayors play an important role in tackling the unprecedented challenges this government inherited. We are committed to working closely with local leaders to deliver safer streets that our communities deserve. And I've already met with several deputy mayors, and council leaders to discuss these important matters. We'll continue to do so in the months ahead.
Mr. Speaker, shoplifting is a major concern for my constituents, businesses and retail workers in Weston-super-Mare, many of whom have contacted me for support. Shoplifting has increased massively with over 1,000 cases this past 12 months, a 31% annual increase. To reassure my constituents, can the Solicitor General outline what steps she is taking to prosecute those responsible for shoplifting?
My honourable member is right to raise this important issue. Shoplifting, I believe, is a scourge in many of our constituencies, and that's why this government is committed to introducing respect orders, beefing up legislation to tackle persistent antisocial behaviour. We are also working with the CPS to ensure that we clamp down on assaults against shop workers, which will be part of a new standalone offence, and recommit to prosecuting in these core areas.
Speaker, the Solicitor General will be aware of concerns around knife and violent crime in many communities, including Huddersfield. In particular, there are serious concerns of how children and young people are being criminally exploited in wider county lines gangs. So how is the department working with regional mayors to improve prosecution rates for knife and violent related offences, and to ensure those at risk of offending receive targeted interventions?
As my honourable friend states, knife crime is a scourge, and one that particularly impacts on young people, too many of whom senselessly lose their lives or are injured every single year. Mayors and councils are going to be essential partners in the mission to achieve safer streets. I've already met with the Deputy Mayor of West Yorkshire, for example, to discuss these matters. And the prosecutorial piece is all part of this government's review to crack down on the sale of offensive weapons. The government is in a hurry. We've already implemented a ban on the possession of zombie-style knives and machetes, but of course there is a lot more we can and should be doing.
That completes questions.